So guess what, everybody? It turned out to be 100% true that Donald Trump is a puppet to a foreign power. Look at that. WikiLeaks tweeted this the other day. Leaked Netanyahu tape. We made Trump nix the Iran deal. Netanyahu is bragging behind closed doors that he, quote, made Trump nix the Iran deal. Imagine for a split second, instead of Netanyahu, this was Putin, and it was a very specific policy that Putin could point to that said, I made Trump do that. What would the discourse be? We already have hyperbole beyond all imagination when it comes to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. I mean, people are acting like there's a Manchurian candidate in the White House. When it comes to specific policies, can they point to, that's the one that Trump did to serve Putin? No, they can't do it. Why? Because there are no policies like that. There are none. In fact, I compiled a list that my friend was asking me earlier today. Hey, what's the list of the policies that Trump did in regards to Russia? And I'll tell you them, in fact, so that you get a good sense of why this is so deranged, why this entire narrative is ass backwards. So here are the policies Donald Trump did in regard that relate to Russia in one way or another. The first one, bombed and occupied Syria and Syrian-aligned troops. Okay, that would be the opposite of what Putin wants him to do. He increased sanctions. That would be the opposite of what Putin wants him to do. He pulled out of the Iran deal. Again, something Putin did not want. He increased NATO troops on Russia's border. Definitely doesn't want that. He sent U.S. warships to the Black Sea. Insanely hawkish, and it's one of those things that President Obama was like, no, I don't want to do that because that goes too far and we're escalating too much with Russia if we do that. And then, of course, Trump approved weapons to be sent to Ukraine because in Ukraine, they're fighting Russia in Crimea, and this is another policy where Obama refused to do it because it was too hawkish against Russia. So Trump does all of those things. These are all policies in regards to Russia that are against Russia's interests. He also was threatening Germany recently. Why? Because he says, we're paying for NATO protection for Germany against Russia. Meanwhile, Germany has an oil deal with Russia. So we're paying to protect you from Russia when you're engaged in business dealings for oil from Russia. So what Trump was trying to do by attacking Germany is saying, stop taking their oil, take our oil, which, by the way, is not something Vladimir Putin's puppet would do. He would want, oh, my puppet here, you keep the oil. You keep the oil deal in place. Donald Trump was trying to blow up that deal so that the U.S. can get that deal, the oil deal with Germany. Not something at all that Putin would want. And again, all of this totally ignored by the people screaming, oh my God, Manchurian candidate, Putin's puppet. It's so disconnected from reality. And I've had these conversations where you point out these policies that are against Russia and they just brush it off. They're just like, oh no, everything that's done by the government that's against Russia is not Trump, but everything that's done by the government that's pro-Russia is Trump. Well, how fucking convenient. So any evidence, by definition, that disproves your theory doesn't count. And I will only look at and point to the things that I think fits my narrative. That is the hallmark of a conspiracy theory. Evidence that disproves you somehow use as evidence that proves you right. So this is why it's so frustrating. Now again, Netanyahu, we made Trump nix the Iran deal. We made him nix the Iran deal. Made him. Media? Fucking crickets. Nobody's saying, oh my God, an Israeli puppet is in the White House. This is so terrible. This is so crazy. Nobody's saying it. And then, by the way, I can go on all day about other governments too. You know, Donald Trump registered 8 new businesses in Saudi Arabia when he was on the campaign trail. Well, that's weird. The top Saudi officials, when they visit the U.S., they stay at Trump's hotels, and they gave him about $300,000. Well, that's weird. That stay didn't cost $300,000. Why did you give him so much money? Well, it turns out Donald Trump ended up doing a $100 billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia. So you have business dealings with them. They come here and bribe you. You approve a $100 billion weapons deal with them. And no fucking media. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. If it's Saudi Arabia, if it's Israel, everybody shut the fuck up. By the way, we also know when Donald Trump was president-elect, Israeli government officials were contacting Jared Kushner, were contacting people within his soon-to-be administration, and they were like, oh, you have to go get involved at the UN, and you have to try to get them to not condemn our illegal settlements. And Jared Kushner, by the way, has taken about $30 million from Israeli banks, and then he goes to try to do the bidding of the Israeli banks. Michael Flynn took, $500,000 from the Turkish government? Then Michael Flynn tries to get a policy nixed that would arm the Kurds so that the Kurds could fight ISIS. Well, Turkey hates the Kurds, so they paid Michael Flynn to lobby in their interests. So you got Turkey, you got Saudi Arabia, you got, Israel. You got a grab bag of corruption from all around the world. But the one that they choose to focus on is the one where Donald Trump has actively done belligerent policies against the will of that administration. And here you have the clearest evidence match. See, this is how you know it's become a religion, the Trump-Russia stuff. It's become a religion. It's non-falsifiable. I will just repeat the same shit no matter what happens. You can give me evidence to the contrary, doesn't matter. You can give me evidence of him being a puppet of other governments. I don't care, and it doesn't matter. And here we have a perfect example of this. So let's go to the Times of Israel. They say this. In a video clip aired Tuesday by Israeli television, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu boasted that Israel was responsible for U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to quit the Iran deal. In the video, which the Khan public broadcaster said was filmed 2 weeks ago, Netanyahu can be seen speaking to activists and senior members from his Likud party. Quote, "We convinced the U.S. president to exit the deal, and I had to stand up against the whole world and come out against this agreement," Netanyahu says in the video. And we didn't give up. All right, so let me pause there. There were people behind the scenes. I don't know exactly who it was. I have a hunch it was Mattis and maybe some others who were telling Trump, like, hey, dude, listen, I know that this was your campaign rhetoric, that pulling out of the Iran deal is a great thing and we need to do that. But I'm here to tell you, now you're president, and that would be a terrible idea. Pulling out of the Iran deal would definitely destabilize the region, makes it more likely Iran will get a nuclear weapon, not less likely. Don't do it. It's dumb. Even people who are right-leaning, who were in the administration, were like, not so sure I'm on board with this nixing of the Iran deal thing. Well, guess what? There was somebody in Trump's ear that made him do it, and that person was Benjamin Netanyahu. He, quote, stood up against the whole world. I had to stand up against the whole world. So Trump was on the fence because a lot of his advisors were like, don't do it. Netanyahu comes in and saves the day and convinces his little puppet bitch boy to do his bidding against what's best for the world and the American people. Let's continue. The prime minister then begins to speak about the Iran regime. Quote, not the Iranian people. I have nothing against them. Before he is interrupted by an unidentified person off screen who says, it will disappear with the help of God. Quote, you said it from your mouth to God, Netanyahu says in response as the clip ends. Do you understand what they're saying there? He's like, I got nothing against the Iranian people. It's just the Iranian government. Somebody chimes in, Iran will disappear with the help of God. And Netanyahu says, you said it from your mouth to God. So in other words, I, Benjamin Netanyahu, would like to see Iran disappear. People went nuts when the Iranian president a while ago said he wishes Israel didn't exist anymore. And they were apoplectic and they were like, oh, my goodness, how impolite and wrong of you to say such a thing. He said something like we should drive Israel into the sea, something along those lines. And they were like, that is unbelievable. And this shows that there's no parity. It's not the same between Israel and Iran. They're the barbarians. They're the savages. We're the civilized people. Well, here you go. Now, Netanyahu behind closed doors is like, yeah, from your mouth to God's ears, it will be good with the help of God. So fundamentalist also, if Iran disappears. So you have somebody, a fucking radical far right-wing lunatic who wants to eliminate a sovereign country, Iran, controlling Donald Trump and his policies. What the fuck is going to happen when Netanyahu calls Trump and says it's time to do regime change in Iran? What's going to happen? Well, we know he's his puppet. Look at this. I stood up against the whole world and I made the U.S. president nix the Iran deal. So what's the next step? I stood up against the whole world and I made the U.S. president start an actual war with Iran and try to overthrow the country. You want your puppet scandal? Here's your puppet scandal right here. And none of you are fucking saying anything about it because it's not about the empirical evidence. It's not about the information. It's not about the reality. The anti-Trump resistance has become a weird religious kind of thing where they always default to the worst arguments that have the least evidence. When I criticize the Democrats and talk about, oh, why are you doing that? Oh, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? It's because I want to defeat Trump and these monstrous Republicans who are like comic book villains with their terrible policies. But you have to do it in an intelligent way that actually fucking works. Shrieking about Russia is objectively not working. That's not my opinion. That's a fact. We'll get to a poll on that later. I'm saving that for a little bit later. But it's a fact. It's not working. But if you want your puppet scandal and you want something that's real, here's your puppet scandal and nobody's saying anything. Israel's an ally of the United States. So therefore, nothing they do is wrong. This is the kind of, and I'm not saying that that's a conscious belief from the media. It is subconscious. Hey, it's our allies are our friends. Therefore, when they do something wrong, overlook it, whitewash it, downplay it. So it doesn't matter that Israel is officially an apartheid state and they're doing illegal occupation and they're expanding. There was a new law, by the way, that said that passed in Israel about how we need more Jewish-only enclaves. So you're codifying your segregation policies, your apartheid policy. That's what you're doing. You're saying, no, yeah, more Jewish-only enclaves. Imagine in Africa, in South Africa, they're like, oh, no big deal. We're just passing a law that says we need more white-only enclaves. Everybody be like, oh, shit, they brought back apartheid. Well, time to be angry and fucking protest and go nuts over this. With Israel, mum's the word, bitch. Mum's the word. Your media that's supposed to be educating you is saying Dickie McGee's acts on really important issues. So as Netanyahu tries to overthrow a government in the Middle East and set the Middle East on fire, his little puppet in the White House is going to assist him along the way. And there's no resistance.